Go. Hello, everyone. This is the Free American Press, their host, Alexander Horat. Today, we're having a very special guest on the show, Maria Horat, my mom. She's a real estate broker, and she's also from Venezuela, and we're really thankful to have her on the show.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for having me on your show. It's a privilege.
Well, thanks for coming on. Would you like to tell the viewers a little bit about Venezuela?
Sure. So we have heard Venezuela in the news lately. I wanted to just show. First of all, I wanted just to say what you see my background here is a beautiful mountain in the city of Caracas, where I was born and raised. It's just one of the most beautiful places I ever been to, and it's a national park. Venezuela is a country that has a lot of diversity, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But I wanted to just share my screen and just talk about the reason why we're talking about Venezuela now. Is that it's recently been in the news as US officials are making a rare trip there to discuss oil imports to help replace Russian fuel. Now, with the war between Russia and Ukraine, Biden is now wanting to lift the ban that they had against Venezuela, even though that doesn't change anything about what the brutal communist dictator has done to the people. But I guess, we really need to look at what's behind all of these politicians rather than just focus on any of them, because unfortunately, in my opinion, they're all the same. But basically, that's the reason why I wanted to talk a little bit about this country today and the impact that the economy, the collapsed economy has had in housing and real estate in general. So I wanted to start by just giving a little bit of a background. Last time we went there, and there you are, Alex. You were probably about 5 years old or so. It was about over 10 years ago, and we were, we had a great time. We haven't been able to get back there. Crime rate is pretty high, unfortunately, because not only, the economic collapse has led to the country being basically a lawless country where a lot of injustices take place there. But Venezuela was once, one of the most prosperous countries in the world. It has, this is the city of Caracas, very modern architecture, and you contrast that with the beautiful background. It's basically a valley because it's surrounded by mountains. You also have jungles and like the oldest place in the world with the highest or the tallest waterfall in the world. El Salto Angel is a beautiful place, really magical. It also has beautiful beaches of all the areas along the Caribbean where Venezuela is. And also we have snow over there. I used to work in the travel industry, an airline, and I was a travel agent. And, I can find many, many reasons why people should be visiting Venezuela, but unfortunately, given the conditions now over there is something that I don't even dare to go at this point. But so Venezuela in the 1950s had the highest GDP, the fourth highest GDP in the world, which is really interesting considering where they're ranked today. And it also has, as of now, the largest proven crude oil reserves in the world.
Yep, that's definitely true.
And it also has the second largest reserve of gold deposits in this area here in southern Venezuela, where unfortunately a lot of illegal mining is going on, child trafficking, there's a lot of corruption, all these, the greedy politicians of the world are involved into all of these operations taking place. So the main question is, what led to Venezuela's economic collapse? I think there are some lessons and some parallels that we can draw from there to what's taking place here. And I just want to focus on the central bank. They had a central bank foundation that took place in 1939 with the oil boom that was taking place. politicians and, the people, they had a lot of money. They were making a lot of money because of the boom. After, in the 1980s, with the collapse of the oil prices, unfortunately, and the politicians had basically stole a lot of the money that was coming in from the money that was being made from the oil. The central bank started printing out massive amounts of money, which is what we know today as quantitative easing, which is an unconventional, so-called unconventional monetary policy as to where the central bank of a country prints money basically out of nothing. They buy bonds and mortgage-backed securities here in the United States, and then they produce large amounts of money, print large amount of money, and what that does is it lowers the interest rates, and supposedly this will stimulate the economy. But unfortunately, when you're making, printing money without anything to back it with, you're printing money just backed by debt, so which is basically less than nothing. So we had a massive amount of money being printed out, massive amount of corruption taking place. By the 1990s, we had a socialist president who got elected because people were looking for a savior to put an end to all the corruption. And he, unfortunately, through his socialist policies that he was promising, was able to get himself elected as president. And that was the last nail in the coffin, the kiss of death for the country. And eventually the quantitative easing took a toll. The massive amounts of bills printed. In 2016, they had so much money they didn't know what to do with it. And so one of the things that the government did was they started confiscating all the bills. They told people they needed to just, turn all the bills in, so to diminish the amount of money circulating. Another policy that they employed to so-called stop the bleeding was to impose just basically sanctions on people to not be able to buy at a certain price. So say the price of spaghetti or the price of any goods or services will have to be at a certain amount. If you couldn't get it for a certain amount, that person who had a grocery store or was selling some kind of a good couldn't sell it. It had to be basically just whatever the government tells you, you can sell something for. So that created a lot of shortages. And even, you had a massive inflation and also shortages. You're unable to buy nothing. And the average salary for somebody who has a job in Venezuela is $7 a month. So that's another thing that is key. So Venezuela is the country with the highest inflation rate in the world at 1,198%. It has been higher. This is as of January of this year. I think last year was quite a bit more than that. I mean, even Zimbabwe is at 60% of the inflation rate. Ethiopia, 33%. So we went from being the fourth largest GDP in the world, well ahead of China, to being with the country with the highest inflation in the world. I mean, that just tells you that that is possible, even for a prosperous country to get in that low of ranking. We have here that Venezuela is also the country with the highest debt to GDP ratio. Not only you have an inflation the way you have it, but also we have the highest debt to GDP in the world, followed by Japan. So that has, people ask themselves, so how do people do, what do they have to do in order to buy products? If you go to a store, what do you have to do? A lot of times people, the products are not available. You got to ask the cashier for a certain product, and given the inflation that's taking place, they'll have to check that day at that time what the item cost. And a lot of people are having to use their gold shavings or the, whatever gold scraps they can find from jewelry to go and purchase items. So that tells you that there is one tangible asset right there that might help a person be able to acquire goods and services in an economy when it gets this bad. The other thing that's interesting is the real estate in Venezuela. So here's an article by Business Time that talks about the cash is king in Venezuela's property market. As lenders, there's basically no lenders that are giving money for people to buy properties. They're not lending any money out there for people to buy property. I think interest rates are like 60%, and you have to actually pay it back within 6 months. So that's out of the question, like here that people have the ability to get a mortgage to buy a home. So that brings me to another interesting fact that I found. Before I go there, I wanted just to show everyone. This is the kind of scenery that you get when people live in apartments. Birds come from the mountain and they come to your balcony. But I wanted to show another screen that talks about the real estate prices in Venezuela, which is quite remarkable, given the fact that people can't even afford to buy food. So we see, this is a neighborhood in Caracas where homes are comparable prices to what you will see in Southern California or even the Bay Area here in California. So look at this one, $3.3 million. There are some more modest ones, 149, quite smaller. But if you look at the prices that they have over there, I mean, supply and demand determine what the prices are, unless these people are just, I'm sure a lot of these people are putting their houses up for sale, they're moving out of the country, but the homes are so beautiful and so great that they're just hoping they can get what what is actually worth. Maybe this is wishful, just the wishful price that I'm not sure what's going on here. But that kind of tells you that something is going on with the real estate. I found this article from Reuters that says that an unlikely winner in Venezuela crisis is the high-end real estate. So they are building luxury apartments and they're building luxury malls. And my question is, who's buying these luxury apartments and these luxury malls? I guess one wild guess will be that perhaps, maybe, there's a lot of money laundering going on, or maybe there are, just the people who are in the elites are buying, or investors. And this article here says these projects start from the same premise. Let's absorb bolivars. The currency has devaluated, of course, more than 80%. It's worthless, the currency over there. When you have a system that penalizes foreign exchange operations and you don't want to commit a crime, what else you have left? I guess you just have to buy real estate. So another thing that this article mentions, which can be another possibility or part of what's happening, municipal officials say multinational companies with operations in Venezuela, which routinely take write-offs on earnings statements due to the appreciation of their bolivar holdings, are key investors in premium office space. So we know that both China and Russia are over there, exploiting the oil and all the minerals. And I'm sure the United States is going to be getting involved also to get a cut. So we see that at the end, inflation, unfortunately, only is nothing but a transfer of wealth from the middle class to the elites and to the bankers. And the questions that we should be asking ourselves is, who is behind this lie? Because we have seen, not just in Venezuela, but in other places around the world, including now in the United States, what the role of a central bank, or in our case, the Federal Reserve, what's their role? To issue money backed by debt, which destroys the economies. And who is promoting this monetary policy? Who has been promoting this monetary policy from the beginning? Who is behind the curtain? Because we can blame all day long the politicians, And but if you read the book, A Creature from Jekyll Island, written by G. Edward Griffin, he talks about a cartel. Basically, the banks are nothing but a cartel that manipulate and deceive. They're masters of deception and manipulate the markets, and that's what we end up being at the end. It's just a collapsed economy, like in Venezuela. It doesn't matter how prosperous a country might be. At the end of these resources will be exploited, and only a certain very small group of people will get their hands on. And so we need to just ask ourselves that question, and we need to try to really get to the bottom of it and try to organize ourselves to get out of this system.
Yeah, you're definitely that we see corporations and lobbyists, especially in California, for instance, which we may see a Venezuela type scenario happen in very soon. And we're starting to see, the wealth gap getting really big in California now. Like Venezuela, there's a lot of homeless in San Francisco, and then a lot of really rich people in San Francisco. So it's really, these big lobbyists and corporations fund both political parties, Republican and Democrat, and in conjunction as well with the banks as well. So I'm sure we're seeing that same thing in Venezuela as well. So I really think the only solution is backing candidates who aren't willing to take money from banks or big corporations or lobbyists, who have clean hands and who want to take back the country for the right reasons and for freedom. That's kind of my thought.
Another thing I wanted just to bring to your viewers' attention is you have had a couple of really good guests. One is Jeffrey Matt, who has actually exposed what's taking place with the members of the United Nations and how they're all coming together, all these nations, their central banks. They're directed by their central banks to basically unite and form an international central bank, which is basically going to control everyone's lives. He's done a lot of great research on that topic. And also, you had another guest, Joseph Farrell, who talked about what a closed economic system versus an open economic system. He has a book called, I think it was The Banksters, Venetian Banksters. He talks about the difference between a closed economic system and an open economic system. So these bankers basically just are promoting a non-renewable source of, as a form of energy that basically for the world, in this case, oil. And they are, when the currencies are tied or the economy is tied to that type of non-renewable resources, called a closed economy, and that leads to wars, it leads to economic collapse and control, government control of the people. So what we need to do, aside from what you're talking about, which is start from there, and that's actually what Edward Griffin in his book talks about, to start from the bottom up, organizing ourselves, really continue speaking out about what's taking place, so more people have the courage to come forward and talk about what's taking place. But we also need to talk about these new forms of energy, actually sources that I think already have been available, but unfortunately, the powers that be don't want these types of energy to become anything that can be made available to the public, because that wouldn't benefit them, but that would actually benefit humanity.
Yeah, you're definitely right. I actually just had a biologist on the show, and he was talking a little bit about hydrogen energy, and I think a company called Fuel Cell Energy that was actually making, these hydrogen power plants, which is basically, like a pure form part of water. And they're able to make power just from that. So there definitely is some new energies, but they can't really make as much money off that as oil. So they can't really control the show as well. So what they really want is control over others. So they're not willing to allow these new technologies to come out. They buy the patents. There was actually on Shark Tank, it's a really famous American TV show where they pitch new ideas. There's actually an invention to make basically, it was a little cooking thing, and as you cook your food in this pan, it actually powers your cell phone and everything. So it was actually kind of making free energy in a way. And there was just a big company that just bought the patent and everything, because they need to keep making their batteries or keep making their propane or whatever just to make more and more money to build their basically outdoor prison. So I definitely agree with you there.
And there is something that might be pretty controversial and probably, something that needs to be talked about, is that we need to shine light as to who is behind all of these, who's really behind all of these. We can focus on our politicians all day long, but they're nothing but puppets of just a puppet master.
Yeah, you're right. And really, the way we can tell who's behind the politician is who's funding them.
That's
Who's funding them?
just follow the money. That's right.
Is it the banks? Is it Walmart? And then to really decide who's really funding them, then you look at who owns the corporation or the bank or the biggest shareholders of that bank or corporation.
And
And
who
that way,
control the bankers? Who control the bankers? So if you read that book, that's probably the best book that I have. I'm actually not even finished reading it, but it's the best book so far that I have read, having to do with just explaining what's taking place on our financial system, The Creature from Jekyll Island. And it just talks about there is a dynasty, a family dynasty, the Rothschilds, who are unfortunately have been involved with promoting this kind of monetary policy since before the French Revolution. So if you go in there, you'll be able to just really read how they have been involved in promoting this kind of basically theft all throughout the world for many, many, many years. Another
yeah,
thing,
that's true.
yeah, when we had the economic boom because of oil, back in the 50s, the Rockefellers actually built a very luxurious hotel in this mountain right behind me, okay, a national park. After the president who was the president back in the 1950s was basically got out of office because there was a coup to get rid of him, the hotel was closed. And so now with this new president, with this new dictator that we have now, they open it back up, but only the elites and the people, only the elites are staying in this hotel, which is, I find interesting that it was something that was built by, a family that has also been involved in promoting bad economic policy that just, collapses economies throughout the world.
Yeah, that's definitely what they do. They just collapse economies so they could steal everything, and then that's what they do. They don't care about anybody but themselves.
Yeah,
So
they don't have any sense of patriotism. They don't care about humanity. It's all about greed, and it's all about confusing people and just making them believe that it's just, a race war or, inequality and all these ideas, and confusing people and all these politicians, all these games that they play. But all they're into is funding both sides of the aisle and funding all the wars that are taking place in the world now.
yeah, that's true. And even this war with Ukraine and Russia and everything, it seems very odd, the circumstances and everything. And honestly, I don't support either of their governments, the Ukrainian president or the Russian president. I think both of their countries are very corrupt, and I think the people should overthrow and get rid of both of those governments and form more freedom governments, in my opinion. I'm gonna share. I'm gonna share the screen to show everybody your YouTube channel. Would you like to tell the viewers a little bit about it and what you're doing with that?
Sure. So I just started a new YouTube channel. Basically, I just want to talk about real estate and just educate people about investments, about the trends and information on real estate. So if you're interested, feel free to take a look. I'm just starting it now, and I'm so happy to be in your show and be able to talk about this topic today, Alex. And I hope you can continue to keep it up, because we need more people around the world awakening about what's happening so that we can do something about it.
Yeah, I definitely really appreciate that. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Uh,
I don't think so. I'm just going to keep watching what you're doing, and I hope to be back so we can have more conversations like this.
okay, well, thanks for coming on the show, and I would like to thank all the viewers who are watching for watching this video, and I just hope you all have a good rest of your day. Thanks again. God bless.
Thank you.